evening, and welcome to another session of Courage in Crisis Conversations in Faith and Mental Health. This is brought to you by the Moravian Church, Eastern West Indies Province, and in response to the challenges that have arisen because we are now, most of us, in lockdown in one way or the other. And we know that there are some things that are going to rise up that are going to create some challenges for families at this time. We particularly today we want to focus on family relations. The last time we did with relationships that were, you had good relationships and you also had relationships that were not so good, and we talked about just friends living together, also families living together, and then we talked about more intimate relationships. We recognize we didn't get a chance to deal with relationships that were already challenged. We believe that most of the people who are listening to us who are married have some issues in their relationships. And so we want to be able to just touch some of those things. We want to begin the conversation, and we're hoping that you can have the conversations as well. This evening, we have with us Mrs. Billy Sterling Lewis. She is a counselor, holistic counseling psychologist, right? And the Reverend Nielsen Waite. Billy's in Tobago. The Reverend Nielsen Waite is in Jamaica, theological tutor for the Moravian Church. They are the United Theological College of West Indies, veteran in dealing with families and these kinds of issues. So welcome to both of you to the panel. We don't have a lot of time to discuss these matters, and I want you to feel free to just lead out, just go as fast as you need to deal with whatever we need to deal with. But one of the things we are dealing with is something called IPVs. You know, let's use those fancy terminologies. Intimate partner violence, intimate partner issues. Brother Waite, you want to lead off, or just deal with us?
Well, I want to say at the beginning, make a statement. COVID asked the question of partners and of people who are staying together and living together. You really thought you knew each other, and now you're discovering that you really didn't know each other as well as you thought. And perhaps that is not a bad thing. It is a challenging thing. And therefore, it is the reality of allowing yourself, some of the blemishes, some of the issues, some of your idiosyncrasies to come to the fore, some that your partner were not aware of or saw but never paid much attention to. But now having to be in a space 24 hours a day almost, it can get on you. It can get on your nerves, and it can cause persons to want to escape, or sometimes escape from the space, sometimes escape from the relationship. And so I want to focus on some of the issues that will bring these to the fore. Some dependency issues, some control issues, and some insecurity issues. And because we're hearing a lot of interesting stories of persons now having been to work, they're working from home. Both persons are working from home. They have children. One partner has to deal with the children and still work. The same partner has to do all the cooking and cleaning and still work. The same partner has to do everything and still work. And there's where some of the control issues and dependency issues can cause persons to ask, do I really have a partner indeed? And so these are some of the issues that we can discuss later.
Okay, great. All right. So there are some things that we talk about in terms of lack of love. Billy, can you deal with that lack of love in relationships? There's some people who are recognizing that the love is not as strong as they thought it was, that the love is dwindling. Can you talk a little bit what contributes to the loss of love in marriage that some people may be feeling right now?
Right. So it's interesting that I think we mentioned this in the first session when we spoke about relationship, that in many instances, it was not COVID that brought, and I think we have just said that really caused these issues. In many instances, the issues were there. The challenges existed before. but we had so many things to distract our minds on a daily basis. We got work, we had work, we had our extracurricular activities, we had our school children, their extracurricular functions. So we didn't have to deal with it. So love loss may have actually existed before, where because of our very busy schedules, many persons in relationships go apart. Now, one of the things that happen often is that trust becomes an issue. When you lose trust in a relationship, it's so interesting that love is so intricately tied up with love. Trust and love are intricately tied up. And so when you have a relationship where for whatever reason trust has been affected, you don't even have to have a total loss of trust, but a big dip in the trust bank, that could definitely cause love to be lost somewhere or cause the love to begin to dwindle. And then we have unmet expectations. So many relationships, and I think, like we have just said, relationships are now being tested to see what they're made of in this COVID time, when you have to be locked down and face the monster or the person that you're married, right? So you have unmet expectations. Before times it was an issue, but I didn't have to make it an issue because I found other ways to fulfill my needs. Whether it was my work and feeling accomplished and loved there, whether it was an extramarital relationship, God forbid, that's just the reality. But now the government said we can't go anywhere. So whatever was our love attention that fulfilled our needs, we can't go there anymore. And we're stuck in this place where I don't have that amount of love anymore because you were not meeting my needs, or it was a mutual experience. And there are other factors, but those are two key ones. And of course, if there ever is hurt, as you started out with, Reverend Wade, IPV, meaning intimate partner violence. If there's ever hurt in a relationship, whether it is psychological, mental, emotional hurt, and of course physical hurt, when you have those hurts occurring in relationship, especially occurring in a cycle, love will dwindle. He talked about codependent or dependency. We use codependency. We will have people still connected because of codependent issues, but no love. So there are lots of factors that could affect that love factor in relationships, and COVID helps to bring these to the fore, unfortunately, or should I say fortunately, because it may be good that we get to sit and examine the reality and the real state of our relationships in these days and times.
So now, Billy, that you've opened that Pandora's box, what do you say to the people who say, "Oh my, she's coming up my alley"? That's exactly what I've been feeling. What do you say to those persons, those couples? And
well, listen,
I'm going to come back to you because I want you to talk a little about the control and the insecurity and the dependency that you raised. Yes.
Well, I want to say it's a starting point. And the first point in any path towards healing is recognition. And if you are at that place where you're facing your loveless relationship head on, there's no more distraction for you. There's no more escaping for you. There's no more, isolate. Well, you can isolate yourself in your house, but it kind of gets hard after a while based on the size of your house. I don't think many of us have mansions, so we kind of have to put them somewhere in the hallway or bathroom. When we have that recognition, it is a first step. And with that, the honesty needs to take place with you, not necessarily with the partner at first, but with you who is experiencing it. Now, if both of you are experiencing it at the same time, well, both of you need to become honest with yourself and then become honest with each other. This is where we are. We recognize that there's no love here. Love has gone out the door, and then we have to be honest about it. I'm not sure, we like to watch on movies, it's not you, I don't hate you, I'm just not in love with you, whatever that means. I'm still figuring that out. But that honesty has to take place. And then there has to be a decision as to what it is that we want now. Do we want to try to salvage this, or do we want to continue to let love make its exit because we have love elsewhere? And these are real hard questions that we have to face. But then we can begin to connect with each other in a path, or connect with other people. So you can start to connect with your pastor, connect with your counselor, whoever, but somebody who can be on an honest journey with you in this love issue in your marriage. And that's just the start of the journey. But I want to say those three things: being aware, being honest, and then connecting in that way to decide what next. What is the decision we have to make?
But don't you need a level of maturity for that, in terms of, because if somebody says, yeah, but it's her, she's the problem, or he's the problem, don't have the, have level of maturity to say, yeah, we have issues and we can take it to the pastor, we can take it to account. So we can call Billy and say, Billy, we heard you. Can you talk to us on the phone or Zoom or whatever it is?
We do need maturity, and honesty is a part of maturity. Maturity, because it's easy to live a facade. It's easy to smile in front of people and hold each other's hand, and when you're out there living the lie that you have love for this person or this relationship is still afloat. But the maturity that you're going to require, as you're saying, yes, the answer is yes, you need maturity. Honesty will come into that. So we're saying, I am honest enough to recognize that at this point, we are in a bad place, and the maturity in us and the respect, hopefully respect is still there, that we can start to make the steps towards mending the relationship.
Okay, so Brother Wade, now you mentioned control, insecurity, and codependency. Talk to us a little bit about that. What do they manifest as? One at a time as you go. You sort of go into.
Well, I want to add just a little bit in terms of what Billy mentioned there, and she was spot on in terms of what she said. And I think a question that persons should have at this time: how much does this relationship mean to me? Things are not good now, but in terms of an evaluation. And when you can write on a piece of paper all the negatives and all the positives, then you can have a comparative analysis, and you can do some introspection, you can do some evaluation. Then you can ask yourself, having done that, is this worth working on? And then you're able to, because what you're doing when Billy talks about being honest, you have to confront the situation, and confronting is not always easy for people. So let's every segue into the whole business of dependency. I mentioned the couple who both of them are working from home, but yet one presents him or herself as superior to the other in terms of the work that they have to do. So they're not doing anything with the children, they're not doing anything with the house, they're not helping in the kitchen. All they're doing is the work on their computer. And therefore, it is that control and dependency. I depend on my spouse to do all the other stuff. I don't want the children near me. I don't want to go near the kitchen. I don't want to do anything else, because my work, although my spouse is working as well, and both of us contribute to the finances of the house, the whole business of control in terms of comes into play there. And insecurity is
before you go further, Brother Wade. Before you go further, Brother Wade, isn't that a cultural problem?
It is a cultural problem, but in reality, our relationships can go above culture and can say it has to do with what we agree to. No two relationships are the same. And so therefore, if I grew up in a home, where my father did nothing and my mother did everything, and I come into the relationship saying, this is how I'm going to operate, I need to be able to say to my spouse, this is what I saw and this is how I would like to operate. Then she may say to me, I grew up in a home where I saw both parents cooperating and sharing together. And so this is the model that I would like to see in our home. And so you are able to negotiate and say, well, you shouldn't go to extremes. Hello.
This is 15 years into the marriage. This is 15 years into the marriage.
Yes, because at the end of the day, it is not your parents' marriage, it is yours. And you have to work out between the two of you what you want in yours. And that is the challenge that you have. So you can't just say culture, or you can't just say it in terms of what you saw in your parents' situation. You have to say what we are going to do, what we're going to work on together now.
Talk about the insecurity, going further.
The insecurity issue, I think I smile because I will say to students from time to time, when I was in graduate school, I didn't have a computer. I had to type everything on typewriter, and they will tell me I'm pretty old, and we will have a laugh at that. But you also with the cell phone, I have now, we are together in a home. People are calling me on a cell phone, and every time some person calls, the other spouse has to ask, who is that? And therefore I said, it is a friend. But the spouse is not acknowledging and accepting that it is just my friend, but that person needs to go now when I'm sleeping now to search my phone, and here is where the insecurity issue comes to the fore. And so now when you were not together for the time that you are now, you can hide your phone, you can put a passcode on it, and you can keep it away from the other person. But now you're locked down together, and therefore these issues that were there, as Billy mentioned earlier, they were there because you were so busy with work and all the other stuff, they did not present themselves. But now you have time and you have space, and they now present themselves.
Okay, now we're trying to keep the program a little interactive, and persons are asking a couple questions here. Somebody asked a question, where does self-esteem play in this whole drama? And another question is there a place of compromise? So self-esteem in terms of the control, in terms of not wanting to do certain things, and where's the compromise in terms of couples who one person saying, I want to do all of, I'm doing all the house stuff and I'm doing my work stuff, sort of thing. How do you respond to those persons who are asking questions?
Well, if I could look at the self-esteem part, excuse me, self-esteem is a big aspect of any area of our lives, and relationship is no less important where that is concerned. Because what we find in relationships where there's an imbalance, there's an imbalance of power. There tends to be an imbalance or poor or difference, let me say it like that, sorry, a difference in the self-esteem of the persons. So generally sometimes we actually have both persons who have poor self-esteem, but it is displayed in different ways. For instance, the controlling one or the violent one may have poor self-esteem, but it manifests itself because of some other clout that they have through aggression and control and even violence. Now, violence doesn't just have to be physical. Mm-hmm. And then normally the victim also have poor self-esteem. And not only that, what we have found often, and the science has found is, among other things, that person has what we call learned helplessness, which is very much linked to poor self-esteem. Now, in many instances, whether it's because of how they were raised and their poor attachment as children with their caregivers, and these are theories, but I have seen them work out, so I believe in these approaches when it comes to dealing with issues like that. They now don't understand how to connect in relationships, and their poor self-esteem for whatever reason. Some people may start out, let's say, I'm a woman, so let's talk from a woman's perspective. You get married, you started off fine, things have changed physically, maybe you don't look as nice, you don't feel as good, maybe you don't work for as much money, and women are saying to you, girl, what are you doing? Get better than that. There's so many factors around that affect and knock at the self-esteem. And these things, if there's poor self-esteem, can really affect the relationship and make it easy for violence to enter, one, and two, for the cycle to continue. Because it is the violent one on the victim who continues to play their roles in the cycle of violence. And that keeps the IPV or even domestic violence continuing. So self-esteem is a big factor, and one of the things that you have to help people heal from when it comes to violence in relationships is their self-esteem, because their sense of self is so damaged from that violence, from that person saying you're stupid, you're ugly, you have nothing to give, nobody doesn't want you, is I alone pick you up, is that because I did have no choice, because I felt sorry for you, to the point where they slap and they kick and they take away your money. That eats at the core of your personhood, your humanity, and your self-esteem. So definitely self-esteem is there in violence, in poor failing relationships, because it's affected, and also in rebuilding it, you have to start to work on that. And then you asked about the compromise. I would just share this quickly, and Rev can add if he wants to. The compromise is important. I know he spoke about the imbalance. That's what it is really, where there's one partner doing everything. And as he was speaking, I was saying to myself, Pastor, just say woman now. Because you know, at the end of the day, it's the woman who is carrying the greater of the burden. In most
Most
cases,
cases, not all.
yes, because we have to be fair. There are some men who are being violently treated or ill-treated in the relationships. That's the reality. But in most cases, you have the woman, or okay, let's just be neutral. We have that individual who is carrying the burden. And then because many times people feel like, you know, I don't want to ask, it's impolite, it's improper, all of us are being stressed. It's that one person who says, if I sacrifice myself, the codependency nature comes out there. If I sacrifice myself and not make any requests or go further to go make demands, quote unquote, then I can keep things afloat. But then you may be keeping, quote unquote, the relationship afloat, but you're dying. And so the compromise is lacking there. But if you want a relationship to function, especially in these times where all of us are being thrown into the stress boat in the same way, but we're all experiencing the stress waters differently. We're all thrown in, but we're experiencing it differently. There has to be a compromise. How are you experiencing this? How can I help? How are you experiencing this? What can we do to make it work for both of us? And that is where compromise will come in.
Okay, quickly, Brother Wade, if you want to add something, you can. But I also want to ask you here, how do you deal with the insecurity? How do you deal with the insecurity that crops up? How should one deal with it if they're, okay, you have to be looking at your phone or whatever, somebody calls, oh, my friend, and you have to walk away. How do you deal with the insecurity in relationships? In addition, if you want to respond to anything else and respond to that as well.
Yeah, I think we have to go back to the one of the values that Billy raised earlier, the whole business of being honest with each other. And so therefore you're saying to the person, if you are feeling insecure, you're expressing the person may and may not see it from their perspective. And the learned helplessness and the challenge that you have in terms of feeling good about yourself. You may have gone through many experiences, and where you are now because of your past, it is hard for you. You are not there yet where you fully accept yourself, value yourself, and love yourself. So you need to be able to say to your partner, this is how I feel when I see you walking away from me and talking on the phone. This is how it makes me feel. Your partner can respond to that by putting you down and say it is not a big thing. Or if they really care, they will listen to you. And so therefore recognizing, because there may be another time that you may be driving in the car and a person, you see a friend of yours and you shout at them, and your partner may be upset and think you're flirting. And that's an opportunity for them to be able to say something. But it is very important for us to be able to, rather than allow it to fester and to blow up into a situation that becomes unmanageable, you come and you say, this is how I felt when you did A, B, and C. And it may not have been a big thing for you, but this is how it made me feel, and I'm being honest with you. And you can preface that. Sometimes I say to a couple, you can preface, I am going to say something to you now. I don't want you to make light of it, but it is not easy for me to say, and I don't want you to reply right away. But even if you do, just think about what I'm saying, and you say what you have to say. And let us have a conversation about it after you've thought about it. And there is where persons can, rather than just reacting and say, you're silly for feeling the way you're feeling, the person have thought it through. Because we are bringing to relationships our baggage, all the experiences and the issues that we've dealt with over time. And so therefore one person, if you care about each other, you need to listen to each other. And one of the issues that I needed to raise, and I hope is not too late for some people, the whole business of space for some people, space is very important. And therefore, having the opportunity within the context of a house at some time of the day to claim your space and to have that space for yourself and to allow your partner to know this is what is important to you, to be away for praying, for meditating, just being by yourself. Perhaps you may choose to do it before the others wake in the morning or late at night, but allowing persons to know that space is important for you. Also allowing the other partner to know that silence at times is important for you. And so therefore, I'm not ignoring you, but I need some time for myself. And so we need to be able to share that so that persons can understand where we're coming from.
Great.
But can I add, Rev, just to say what he said, that issue of communication is so crucial in relationship. That's the key point he's harping at. And I think what would be good is that in this time where we have not so many escape routes, that we practice communication. And I like what he talked about having a space. And I personally had that. I remember when I got married first, I told my husband, I need my own room. And he laughed. And I said, I need my own room. I cannot be with you 24/7. And it's not that we don't sleep together. But there are times, and especially now, I go to that room often. I've had to shift the room because I've had children, so the rooms have been taken up. But now I just use the baby room because the baby's not sleeping in there. And I put on my essential oils. I normally use my frankincense or whatever. And I get done when I lie down on the baby mat. And that is my time to think and pray and just unwind without children or husband or work responsibilities. That's just my time. I mean, most times I fall asleep. But it shows the importance of that time and how much good it does for me, even if all I'm doing is sleeping there.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. One of the things that you said, Brother Waite, and which dovetails into communication, is the sense of saying, I feel this way. And you preface the whole thing of prefacing conversations and say, well, I have something to say. I feel this. And I think that's a really good way to start the conversation that you want to have with your spouse. And that is going to be very important. Can any of these things lead to infidelity? Well, anyhow, no, we're on lockdown now. So infidelity doesn't mean I mean, is there infidelity outside of being able to run off somewhere because you're home and you can't find a good enough excuse as to why you're out late at night because you should be in since 12 midday?
Well, for me, I'm thinking, go ahead, Rev, go ahead.
Ladies first, go right ahead.
Well, let me make it quick. I'm just thinking there are enough opportunities, let's be real, because you could say go into the supermarket and the supermarket lines are long and you find a way to get the groceries quickly at the end. These factors can lead into infidelity, yes, but as we said earlier, in many cases, the infidelity was there. And the Bible is clear on these things. Many of our behaviors don't start at behavior level. The Bible says it. Murder don't start with the swipe of the knife or the sword. Murder starts up here. And the same thing with infidelity. The physical act it wasn't the start of the affair. It started here and it trickled down to our heart. So we were impacted and then we moved into it. So maybe people who may have already been straying in the relationship and now being locked on and facing, I'm just using this word again, no offense to anybody, the monsters that they're married to, because this is what I'm seeing now. I never had to face you for so long. They have to find a way to get out and they take chances. And we do have things that happen online like we're using now. People are using these technological advances to, allow themselves to have affairs technologically. It's not the same as physical touch, but they can still fulfill many needs. Pornography is one of it. And let me tell you, if you're stuck in a loveless relationship, a sexless relationship, and there's no letting up in this lockdown time, and you have a relationship at the same time with pornography, some relationship is going to be intensified. And it's very likely that pornography is going to be intensified. So it doesn't always have to be another person, but other factors like this or issues like this could become real in these times.
Brother Waite?
Since we don't have a lot of time, I'm into recommend, because I'm a teacher. I like to recommend books. There are two books that I want to recommend. The author is Harville Hendricks. Harold Hendricks, he has two books that I found very helpful for my library. One is called Getting the Love You Want, and then the other one is called Keeping the Love You Find. Getting the love you want, and then the second one is Keeping the Love You Find. And getting is not always, getting can be easy sometimes. Not always the one you want, but you can get. But the reality is keeping. The challenge, the big one is keeping. And therefore, I think confronting, up to last week, I'm working with a young lady in terms of confronting, having a conversation with her father about how he's treating her daughter. And she's not able to do that. She just can't have that confronting relationship with her father, because she's just going and she's asking me to do it for her. And I'm saying I'm not doing it, because you and your father live in the same home and you have to have that. I think that's the big one for a lot of people, to be able to say, I need to say something to you. And I don't want you to make light of it, because at the end of the day, it is how I feel. You may say I should not feel that way, but it is how I feel. And so we need to move smartly, and we need to move intentionally to say to persons, to confront situations and to confront issues. And we don't have to quarrel about it. We just try as best as we can to say it when it is the right time to say it.
Okay, great. Billy, you raised the issue of pornography. And I think that even if it's just a raise, the sense of thinking that is a real thing that some people are struggling with at this time, that's a part of their relationships, that may be creating some difficulty there. And we need to say to persons that maybe as difficult as it may be to admit those things, there is no getting past it unless we are able to admit those things. If you're going to keep the love that you have, you gotta be able to be honest. And finding the love that you want, there has to be a level of honesty and maturity. What else would we want to say to persons who are locked down together, who are in relationships? Okay, there may be a couple that is together, but they really were on the brink of divorce. But they living in the same house, probably have already moved out of the bedroom and that sort of thing. What do you say to those persons?
You know, I want to start by, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, you go ahead.
Okay. I want to start by, let me just mention two things and then Rev, you can pick up. One of it is that word covenant. For those of us who are married, we didn't just go into this, well, hopefully we didn't just go into this Vike, you know, and we made a covenant before God and man, and we are speaking to believers as well. And what I found is that people are throwing away relationships for non-essential issues that can be worked around. Like one author said, it's not pink or blue, it's just difference. And we are throwing away relationships for that, or marriages. There's no infidelity, there's no abuse, there's just that we've grown apart, you know. And that happens because we're growing, we're evolving, and life, the way we were living, made it easier for us to grow and grow very well, but grow apart, because we had enough things on the outside to capture our attention and connect us to and keep us away from each other, and so going together. So when we think about here's where we are, what do you think about when you think about your covenant? And here's how you could start. Don't think about the hard part of covenant. Think about the wedding day. You know, ever so often I go into my closet with my dresses. I had a stellar dress. I love my dress. And I look at that dress and I say, boy, I mean, I told my husband already, you have to go marry me again, you know, because if ever I get bored, you have to propose and marry me again, because you have to keep it going, right? So you might get another invitation for a wedding, you know. But go back to the fun parts. In addiction, we say start at rock bottom. But in something like this, start at the good part and begin to remind yourself, what was this covenant? You said I do, but what does that mean in the sight of God? And then maybe what you could do, and that's a process. So it's not just doing it one time and that's it. It may be something that happens for the rest of COVID lockdown and beyond. If you decide, you know, this covenant means enough to me that I could make a shift because there are not any, you know, life-threatening or soul-threatening issues in this relationship. But the other thing I want to add quickly, so Rev can get in, is that maybe what you could begin to do is go back to, if you have ever done it, go back to, if you've never done it, try it. Going back to affirming that person and that marriage. Now, listen, if you don't have a good relationship, it may not work very well face to face right off. So take pen, take paper, and write down some like 5 statements, positive, affirming statements about your spouse. So for me, who has a husband, and going to just use an example, I would say, well, he is really still the best thing since sliced bread. He still look hot. I don't know, whatever. He still makes a lot of money. Money is your tickle. I don't know. Write down 5 things and do that every day. You may have to say the same things over and over, and then get to a point where you could say that to the person. You may not start off saying 5, but say, one to the boy. It was one thing, we can't, when people speak very differently. If it's one thing I like how you always make our yard look nice, because people always tell me how, girl, your yard look nice, and begin to give them those affirming statements. What you do is you begin to build a reconnection channel there, that they're saying, okay, something is still tickling there, and you can start to reconnect it. Those are just 2 things. But 1, check your covenant again. Go back to that. Does that still have value or significance to you? And then 2, begin to affirm that person, and by doing that, also affirm your relationship again.
Okay, Brother Wade.
One of the I keep saying to who will listen, COVID-19 asks of us a lot of creativity. Whether you're a pastor in your church in terms of creative ways of being a shepherd, when you're serving people in the community, you have to find creative ways to do that. And in relationships, it can ask of you some creativity as well, rather than thinking in terms of doing the same thing as you often did them. How now what can we do differently? And so therefore, you assign to each partner some suggestions within the context of where you are to bring some creativity to the relationship, to spice it up. And you have to be very open and honest with each other and accepting. Because I remember some years ago, I asked a couple to do that, and she came back with some high heels in a board house, and he exclaimed when he heard her coming in with a high heel, "You want to bore a hole in my floor?" And that killed the moment. But no, you have to try to be as creative as you can, because you will get on each other's nerves if you're confined in a situation for over time. If you're not thinking creatively, and if you're, I don't like to use a term in terms of thinking out of the box, but I prefer to say thinking creatively and writing some suggestions in terms of what each can do differently. And you have to be open to each other to carry out what each. If you make 6 suggestions, you have to be open to carry out at least 3 from each person, so that you allow yourself and to move to another sphere in terms of your relationship. Because if you go through the same drudgery within a context that we are in, then it can bring a lot of conflict to the fore. And so therefore you have to find creative ways to make the situation better for you.
Okay, as we close, Brother Wade, we are people of faith. We believe that God created the institution of marriage. We believe that God wants people to be in these relationships, and we believe that God can change all things, all circumstances, even though that in some cases divorce is a reality. We also accept that. Say a couple words, if you wish, on the whole question of forgiveness and marriage and relationships. Could you, Brother Wade? And believe you want to jump in as we close.
Well, I think it is very important. I've had two friends who've divorced and remarried. So there's always hope, and because of them, I know them today. And if there's always hope. People make mistakes. People say things that that they shouldn't have said. And in this time, can be insensitive, and you can say things and do things that can get on the other person's nerves. That's okay. But taking that time out for that introspection so that you can pray before you say something that is very important to you, to the other person. That you ask divine intervention and divine guidance in terms of your saying something that you need to say rather than keeping it. And I think it is important that you are able to say, begin by saying to your partner, this is something that is important to me. I've been praying about it a lot, and I believe it is time for us to discuss it. I believe God wants the two of us, to talk about A, B, and C. And so that is helpful in terms of building your faith and building your understanding of each other. And so you can discuss without without hating each other. Because as Billy mentioned earlier, sometimes you see persons getting to that point where you can't believe that they really smile in each other's face when they committed themselves together. So it is, and so you have to look in terms of the principal things that we need to focus on, not just a position I'm going to hold, a position that you're going to hold, but look above the position to the principles involved in the situation.
Right. Thank you very much. We have outdone ourselves today, gone very much longer. We know that there are always new levels and always deeper we can go to deal with relationships, because relationships are more than just complex. I think that they're complicated. There are different levels that go further.
Can I just say this before you close up? Because I know we have to go, but you had asked me to share that. I want to say forgiveness is like the salve for bleeding soul. And many things cause our soul to bleed in relationships. And so, even if, no, for us, the people of God, we want our relationships to thrive and survive. But even if the relationship does not work, there's divorce, there's separation, forgiveness is going to be so important for you to stop the oozing from your soul for whatever it was that caused that wounding, that hemorrhaging. So forgiveness, and we hear this all the time, and they made it popular. I don't know why, because God said it a long time ago. But forgiveness is not for the person who has done you the injury. The forgiveness is for you. That is like you saying, let me bandage this wound and put the things on so it can stop bleeding and oozing. So it's gonna salvage, and it's not a one-off thing. It's gonna help over time. But even if your relationship ends and you go into another one, you don't want to bleed on a new relationship with wounds from a previous one. So forgiveness is one of the ways that you heal that oozing in your soul.
Well, thank you very much, Billy. Thank you very much, Reverend Wade. This has been quite a dive into relationships. We want to encourage you, if you're listening and anything that we said spoke to you and your relationship, don't be afraid to reach out to any one of us is on this panel, or for that matter, Moravian clergy. We can speak of our Moravian clergy, or you can just try to get to somebody to have a conversation. Because when we don't have the conversations, death takes place. When we begin to have the conversations, air comes, life comes, things can change. Because when you're so hurt, you can only see one perspective. But when you sort of air out your spirit, then you're able to see, hey, maybe there is hope beyond this circumstance. We'll have our conflicts and our circumstances and situations. We want you to also know that the previous episode to this one is also on the same platform that you are viewing this on, whether that's YouTube or Facebook, for the Calvary Moravian Church in Barbados. We thank you for joining us. I don't think I introduced myself at the beginning, but I am Reverend Algernon Lewis. I'm the chairman of Moravian Church East and West in this province. And it's our pleasure to have brought you this program. And God bless you. We are praying for you. We are going to get through this. And we pray that the Spirit of the Lord be with you and keep you. Blessings. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us.